Afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I would request, like, if your connectivity is not an issue, to switch on your videos. That gives some feel of having a discussion or a talk. So let me introduce you to our speaker for this session, Dr. Anike Faga. He's an associate professor of environmental studies at Ashoka University. He works in the area of science and technology studies, democratic politics, and agrarian studies. His research primarily examines the ongoing controversy over genetically modified food crops in India. Genetically modified food crops in India. He works on questions of environmental justice, food democracy, and sustainable agriculture with a focus on Maharashtra. He holds a PhD in anthropology from Yale University. His doctoral thesis was awarded the 2016 Sardar Patel Best Dissertation Prize. He also holds a BTech from IIT Kharagpur and MS from University of Southern California. Before joining Ashoka University, he was an assistant professor at University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. He has published his research in Journal of Agrarian Change, Frontiers in Sustainable Food Systems, and comparative studies of South Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, while policy-oriented writings have appeared in the Hindu Economic and Political Weekly, the People's Archive of Rural India, Article 14, and The Wire. His recent book, the slide that you are seeing, titled Genetically Modified Democracy, it looks at how state, science, and agrarian capitalism interact in novel ways to transform how democracy is lived and understood, and sheds light on dynamics of technological change in populous unequal polities. I have been lucky to have read the book. It's a fascinating book, and I think today's talk will be it's an important talk, and I hope you learn many things about genetically modified crops and his book in this talk. Once again, a request to keep your videos on if connectivity is not a concern. Yes. Up to you, Aniket. Yeah. The floor is yours.
If at any point my voice is unclear, please let me know. Good day. Thank you all very much for being here, and I'm very grateful to Professors Tyagu Rangarajan and Tirtha Chatterjee for this invitation. There are few things more delightful than being invited by someone who's read the book, so I'm especially grateful. This book is the outcome of nearly 10 years of research, actually more than 10 years of research. A very large number of scientists, activists, academics, government officers, political leaders, journalists, agribusiness entrepreneurs, and not the least farmers and farm laborers have shared their insights and experiences with me as I was conducting this research, and I am in their debt. I also wish to thank Vinu Luthria and Prashant Gunjan of Orient Black Swan for publishing and marketing the book in South Asia, and Yale University Press for the global edition. This book follows the life of the ongoing unresolved public policy controversy. Should India allow the release of genetically modified food crops? There's a lot of confusion about GM crops, so let me clarify that GM crops and conventional regular crops, they're not the same. Conventional crops come from farmers' varieties or varieties developed by plant breeders in public or corporate research stations. For instance, the Green Revolution paddy and wheat, the onions, chilies, potatoes we eat, the coconut palms that have been promoted in the Western Ghats in Kerala. These are all, actually, let me not go into coconut palms. The onions, chilies, potatoes we eat are all conventional crops. Even the coconut palms are, but they come more from tissue culture, so I removed them. But the coconuts are also not genetically modified. So what are genetically modified crops? GM crops are those in which one or two traits of interest are introduced in the laboratory via recombinant DNA technology. Because recombinant DNA technology introduces only one or two traits, it is an adjunct to conventional breeding, not a replacement. "99% of the GM crops grown globally are in commodity crops. Soybean 50%, corn or maize 31%, cotton 13%, and canola or rapeseed 5%. Just two traits dominate the global GM crops acreage: herbicide tolerance, HT, which is 47%, and insect resistance, or BT, which is 12%. And both traits together, or which is called stacked trait GM crop, are 41%. Herbicide tolerance is a farm management tool by which you can deal with weeds by spraying a herbicide like the controversial glyphosate or dicamba. Everything except the herbicide tolerant crop will die, and you don't have to weed manually or pay someone to weed manually. So again, the BT trait is a pest resistant trait. The herbicide tolerant trait is a farm labor management trait. So neither of these traits by themselves are improve the yield potential. There are two people waiting in the lobby. So this is the global picture. In India, we have only BT cotton formally approved since 2002. BT brinjal has been in a moratorium since 2010. Delhi University's herbicide tolerant mustard, which is a hybrid mustard, is also stalled since 2016. But HT-BT cotton, known more popularly as Roundup Ready Flex, is commonly available through illegal and smuggled seeds, as is BT brinjal as per news reports. I want to stress two aspects here. There's a common misconception that GM crops improve yields. Like I said, they don't. Second, all of these commodity crops are linked to global agrobusiness giants and are at the heart of the industrial processed food and meat and industrial meat complex. The same complex, which by many accounts is responsible for forest degradation, water and soil pollution, and our vulnerability to pandemics. Since the 1990s, there are a range of issues that have arisen in the debate over allowing, in the debate in India over allowing GM crops. This debate may well transform food environments irreversibly in a country already witnessed to deep agrarian distress, evidenced by over 3 lakh suicides by farmers in the last 2 decades. Moreover, since India has millions of small farmers who may adopt cultivation of GM food crops, the dispute in India is of global significance. To understand the debate, I was keen not only to conduct research with farmers, but also look at seed companies and state bureaucracies. Therefore, along with farmers and activists, I conducted multi-sited ethnography and I conducted multi-sited ethnography inside public and corporate biotech laboratories and offices of the union government. I also conducted research in multiple public and private archives to capture the historical emergence of biotechnology as a new field of science in India. All this over 2 continuous years, followed by shorter spells. The GM debate is usually framed in terms of the global conflict between farmers and transnational agribusinesses such as Monsanto. However, I argue that this implicitly casts the Western experience with GM crops as the universal experience, when in fact, the Indian experience is more reflective of those of other so-called developing countries and poses a deeper challenge to our understanding of science and democracy in the context of agriculture. Much of the debate on GM crops here and worldwide tends to be about impacts on farmers, consumers, biodiversity, health, and the environment. And there are strong positions among scientists, among farmers, among activists, with no real consensus. In my book, I argue that this impasse owes to more fundamental questions. Namely, which science or sciences can best speak for the public interest in GM crops? Specifically, which science is the custodian for farmers' interests, plant breeding or molecular biology? Second, how do different publics shape and direct programs for agricultural research and food provisioning? I think this is the deeper issue that the GM debate articulates in India and also in many developing countries such as Brazil, Mexico, and Bangladesh. In the interest of time, I'm going to focus on the first question by shedding light on some important but frequently ignored issues surrounding insect resistant BT cotton in India. The question of who can speak for the interests of Indian agriculture is really a key issue in the GM debate worldwide, and the Indian debate really throws this up in sharp relief. Before moving further, I want to highlight two aspects of this question. First, the question of which bodies of science can best address public interest in agriculture is not itself a scientific question. That is, it goes beyond science into the realm of politics and policies. Second, it is also not a question that can be easily settled by mass or electoral politics. You can't conduct a popular referendum on whether plant breeding can best address farmers' interests or molecular biology. So it requires fine-tuned dialogue among sciences, scientists, policymakers, and the public representatives. I mean, this is always, the difficulty with the issues of science policy making. Science policy is itself does not lend itself to a deductive or even a straight up scientific answer. Let me begin with two moments in the Indian debate over GM crops to highlight what I'm trying to suggest. In February 2010, just after the then Union Environment Minister, Mr. Jairam Ramesh, had imposed a moratorium on BT brinjal, the then Union Agriculture Minister, Sharad Pawar, wrote a strong letter to Prime Minister Manmohan Singh criticizing the moratorium. Among other things, Pawar claimed that the moratorium had demoralized scientists and set the clock back on agricultural research. Similarly, in July 2014, soon after Mr. Modi became the Prime Minister, he addressed the Indian Council of Agricultural Research and asked them to work towards the mantra of more crop per drop. In response, the then Director General of the ICAR, Dr. S. Ayappan, said that we think GM crops are the way forward in this country under your leadership. Now, this might suggest to you, and many people do think, that agricultural scientists are in favor of GM crops, and the opposition is from within quotes misguided activists and some politicians. So let me take you 20 years back to the 1990s. This is one of the first books to explore the history of biotechnology outside the West. Few know that in the early 1990s, before Monsanto could release BT cotton in the US, the company tried to partner with the Indian government to release the GM crop through public sector institutions. The Union Department of Biotechnology strongly backed the proposal and negotiated favorable terms with Monsanto. The company was ready to give BT cotton to the ICAR, the Indian Council of Agricultural Research, for some 5 crore rupees at that point. But the deal could not go through. Interestingly, it was not activists or politicians who blocked the deal, but the then Director General of ICAR, who later became the Member Agriculture of the Planning Commission, Dr. Virender Lal Chopra. How do we make sense of this? Was Dr. Chopra mistaken or uninformed? That is not very likely, because Dr. Chopra actually is one of India's pioneering biotechnologists and the founder director of the Indian Agricultural Research Institute's Biotechnology Center in the late 1980s. So he knew biotechnology. He was not, he knew the field. So this U-turn over 2 decades from Dr. Chopra to Dr. Ayappan is emblematic of the changing relationship between plant breeding and agricultural biotechnology, which I argue is a core issue underlying the GM debate in general and BT cotton in particular. My main argument is that over the past 3 decades, the Department of Biotechnology has implicitly altered the priorities of public agricultural research in our country, but from outside the ICAR system. In this way, limited tools of biotechnology have implicitly overshadowed Indian agricultural research at large, to the detriment of farmers and our collective detriment. Further, this has happened without any democratic mandate or even scrutiny, which of course raises the question of how has this happened? Now, it's a complex story through some complex dynamics having to do with what happens after the Green Revolution, how certain priorities get hardwired into the institutions of agricultural research, as Rajeswari Rena has insightfully written about. I suggest that the marginalization of the ICAR has also happened through the DBTs, through the Department of Biotechnologies, interventions in education, research, and regulation of GM crops. And understanding this dynamic is crucial to making sense of our experience with BT cotton. In the remaining time, I will go over the Department of Biotechnology and its role in launching GM crops in general and BT cotton in particular. And then I will highlight aspects of BT cotton as a trait and as a crop, aspects that have received less attention in popular and scholarly commentary. In the 1960s and 70s, scientists like Pushpa Bhargava, Satish Maheshwari, Maharani Chakravarti, H.K. Das, Ubaid Siddiqui, Joseph Padiyati were setting up the first laboratories of molecular biology in the country. They collectively lobbied senior science administrators like Y. Nayudama, M.S. Swaminathan, and M.G.K. Menon, and won a union department of biotechnology for themselves, which reported directly to the Prime Minister. So this was in 1986. So in 1986, India became the first country in the world to have a high-powered department of biotechnology, and so high-powered that it reported directly to the Prime Minister. When I read writings of India's first generation of molecular biologists, and when I interviewed some of them, two things stood out. First, the zeal to make a name for India and Indians in global biotechnology. And second, a lack of interest, almost a prejudice against agricultural sciences. So what was the biotechnology that this department reporting, sorry, and what was the biotechnology that this department was supposed to direct and promote? Archival material suggests that biotechnology was framed around essentially 6 tissue culture techniques: genetic engineering, immunotechnology, enzymes, tissue culture, photosynthesis, and alcohol production. Now, this is not how any agricultural scientist would define her field. In fact, molecular biologists, or new biologists as they were called then, were emphatically not agricultural scientists. They were principally trained in chemistry or biochemistry. They did not work in the fields, but in labs. They did not work with crops, but with model systems like E. coli. Through a curious paradox that I elaborate in the book, biotechnologists promised revolutionary applications in agriculture, but steadfastly stayed out of the ICR system. They carved out a separate high-powered federal department for themselves. In retrospect, this was a momentous decision with profound consequences. With the establishment of the DBT, but DBT stands for Department of Biotechnology. With the establishment of the DBT, the department launched programs in research, education, and regulation. I will restrict myself to research. The DBT was given charge of, among other things, setting up and supporting centers of excellence for research and development in biotechnology, acting as a screening and approving agent for the government with regard to importing and transferring of new technologies. It was also the agency of government to assess, review, and monitor all plans of different agencies as they related to biotechnology. As an illustration of how the DBT came to alter the priorities of agricultural research, consider the investment in GM crops research. From the period 89 to 97, DBT invested roughly 4% of its budget primarily for research on GM plants, that is genetic transformation. Genetic transformation is one step in the long and complex and difficult process of developing a viable GM crop. For transformation, you need to have genes of your own to introduce into crops. And then to release the crop, you need major plant breeding effort to introduce the transgenic trait. Now, interestingly, the DBT's major focus was transformation itself and not the upstream work of gene discovery or the downstream work of varietal or hybrid release. Even until the early 2000s, our public sector did not have its own BT gene to develop a public sector GM cotton. And that does have something to do with the relative neglect of gene discovery vis-a-vis transformation. So only the middle step that you see in the slide is what the DBT effectively focused on. It neglected gene discovery and the important work of varietal release that would have allowed transformed plants to be turned into viable crops for farmers. This investment into transformation was a whopping 61% of the estimated investment on transgenic, that is genetically modified crops, across the public and private sector. Other government bodies, including the ICAR, Indian Council of Agricultural Research, contributed only 16% of the investment. The availability of such funds altered the incentive structure for agricultural sciences and pushed it into the direction of genetic modification. Let us examine the case of BT cotton to see how this played out. After the ICAR refused Monsanto's offer, MS Swaminathan referred Monsanto to the private seeds company Mahiko, founded by Badrinarayan Barwale in Maharashtra in 1966. In the early 90s, Mahiko and Monsanto struck a deal on BT cotton, and in 1998, Monsanto picked up 26% stake in Mahiko. To launch BT cotton, Mahiko needed to import BT cotton seeds from Monsanto in the US. Mahiko applied for import permission but was stonewalled by the Ministry of Agriculture. So Mahiko approached the Department of Biotechnology, and a high-ranking official issued an ad hoc permission without consulting the Ministry of Agriculture. It was this permission bypassing the Agriculture Ministry that allowed Mahiko to begin breeding BT cotton in India. In 2002, Mahiko received regulatory approval and BT cotton was formally released in India, though smuggled BT cotton seeds were already circulating in Gujarat and elsewhere since the late 90s. Once released in 2002, there's been no looking back for BT cotton. Within 4 years or so, over 80% of the cotton acreage in India was in BT cotton. Today, it might be over 98%. And this has generated a heated debate among researchers and activists. So BT cotton is a cotton transformed with the BT gene. And the BT gene confers resistance to pink and American bollworms, which are a major cotton pest. So BT cotton is basically a pink and American bollworm resisting cotton. Now, the fact that within 4 or 5 years, over 80% of the cotton acreage in India has been in BT cotton, this is seen by advocates as a robust exercise of farmers' choice in support of an advanced technology. Farmers have voted with their feet, the argument goes. There is an additional argument here that BT cotton must be reducing pesticide costs and increasing farm profitability. If anyone suggests otherwise, then they're seen as doubting farmers' intelligence. As the then Deputy Chairman of the Planning Commission, Montet Singh Ahluwalia, had asked me when I asked, do you think farmers are fools? If why are they buying BT cotton unless it's working for them? On the other hand, critics point out that BT cotton sales equally reflects the fact that non-BT cotton seeds have almost vanished from the market, and therefore that farmers actually have very limited choice in terms of seeds. They further argue that BT cotton has in fact contributed to agrarian distress and farm suicides, especially in the dryland areas of Vidarbha and parts of Telangana. Now, I'm not going to try and settle this debate here. Instead, I think it is more useful to focus on the political economy and ecology of BT cotton to get deeper insights into the Indian experience. What is a farmer purchasing when she or he purchases BT cotton seeds? The BT trait, as I said, confers resistance to pink and American bollworms. the BT gene codes for a protein that is toxic to these pests. In India, the Monsanto Mahiko joint venture is the sole provider of the BT gene. In 3 decades, the Indian public sector has failed to develop a BT cotton variety for farmers. So any company legally wanting to sell BT cotton would have to license the gene from Monsanto Mahiko. Initially, there were a few other gene providers like JK Agri Genetics, in IIT Kharagpur. Some companies tried to get a gene from China. But over time, Monsanto Mahiko became the predominant BT provider to Indian seed companies. Now, initially Monsanto and its licensee seed companies charged a hefty price premium for this trait. In the beginning, a 450-gram packet of BT cotton seeds was priced between 1600 and 1850 rupees. In comparison, a similar size packet of non-GM hybrid cotton would cost 350 or 500 rupees, and ordinary cotton varieties would be even cheaper. In case you're unfamiliar with the difference between hybrids and varieties, I will explain that in a few minutes. Companies claim that farmers stand to gain much more from the reduction in pesticide usage than the premium they will pay for the BT seed. In reality, however, bollworm attacks may wax and wane from season to season. In those seasons where pest incidence is low, BT cotton offers no advantage over its non-BT equivalent. So basically, purchasing BT cotton is like purchasing an insurance, and not a very good insurance at that, because BT hybrids in India show large variability in terms of the expression of BT toxins in different parts of the plant and at different points in the season. In fact, a study by the Central Institute of Cotton Research shows that the expression of the toxin is the lowest in parts which are most susceptible to bollworm attacks. So this is why I'm saying you're purchasing insurance, but not a very good insurance. Further, farmers spray pesticides for a number of other pests that afflict cotton. In tropical ecologies, it's not that cotton has only two pests, the pink and American bollworm. So farmers anyway spray pesticides. Finally, bollworms will inevitably become resistant over time to the specific BT protein, rendering the GM crop ineffective. Jaideep Hardikar, whom you heard earlier today, has written about the horrifying case of at least 50 farmers dying and over 1,000 getting poisoned in Vidarbha in 2017 on account of pink bollworms becoming resistant to BT cotton. This is not surprising, but basic ecology. Here are 2 seed packets that my collaborator Chitrangada Chaudhary and I collected from Odisha 3 years ago. On the left is an unlabeled seed packet called Advance 999. It is supposed to be both BT and herbicide tolerant. That is, it is an illegal seed packet if it works and a fake product if it doesn't. It has suggestive taglines like Muskurata Kisan Khushhali ki pehchan, smiling farmer, the symbol of prosperity. And I don't know if you can see it clearly, but basically around the ball there are 2,000 rupee notes. This illegal or fake product was being sold to farmers at 1,000 rupees a packet, which is over the price notified by the central government. On the right is a legal BT cotton seed packet by Nuzividu Seeds, India's largest seed company. Now, it has a curious disclaimer in English, which says, the pink bollworm has developed resistance to BT proteins, and as a result, BT cotton cannot give protection against pink bollworms. This disclaimer, I repeat, is in English, which most farmers do not read. So by Nuzividu's own admission, BT cotton will not give any protection against pink bollworms, and still farmers are paying premium prices for BT cotton, and Monsanto and Mahiko are earning a trait fee or a royalty. So I mention this because we have to ask ourselves, what choice are farmers exercising in buying something so expensive, which is either fake or by the company's own admission does not work. Let us now consider aspects of BT cotton as a crop. Across the world, BT cotton is available in varieties. Farmers can save varietal seeds and sow them season after season. Hybrid seeds, on the other hand, have to be purchased afresh every season, forcing farmers to shell out money. In surveys, When asked if they preferred hybrids or varieties, farmers have expressed a clear preference for GM varieties. Yet, India is the only country in the world where BT cotton is exclusively available as hybrid seeds. The implications of this are profound. It has given a decisive advantage to Monsanto Maheko and to BT cotton seed vendors like Rasi, Ankur and Nuzividu. Whereas competition was extremely stiff in the market for non-GM cotton hybrids, with the entry of BT cotton, just 7 or 8 companies have managed to corner 75% of the market. Of those, 3 or 4 companies saw a meteoric rise in their annual turnover. So for instance, Maheko was actually not known for its cotton hybrids. It was known for its vegetable seeds. But because it was the first entrant with BT cotton and it's the next competitor, and it had a 2-year window where it was the sole provider of BT cotton. It swept the market even though it did not have good cotton hybrids. Similarly, Rasi Seeds, headquartered in Coimbatore, was 110 crore before it launched its BT hybrids in 2004. By 2012, it had grown to about 450 crores, about 75% of which was contributed by BT cotton. Similarly, the Maharashtra-based Ajit Seeds grew from about 75 crores to 250 crores over a decade. Before it launched BT cotton in 2006, its market share was 3 to 4% in cotton. By 2012, it had grown to 10%. The most decisive impact on cotton cultivation has been in North India. Only with BT cotton were corporate bred hybrids able to make an entry in the North Zone, where commercially inclined farmers cultivated cotton varieties largely bred within public institutions. In 2005, the government permitted the release of BT cotton hybrids of Maheko, Rasi and Ankur seed companies in the North Zone. And in subsequent years, many more companies released BT cotton hybrids. This led to widespread abandonment of cotton varieties across the North Zone and a permanent loss of some valuable cotton biodiversity. When an entire zone switches from variety to hybrids, aggregate yields will go up. But that has nothing to do with the BT trait. It has to do with varieties replacing hybrids. So I wish to conclude with the following points. The BT cotton saga in India has very little to do with farmers' choice. If it were about farmers' choice, then India would not be the only country in the world not offering BT cotton varieties to farmers. Second, BT cotton was supposed to lower cost of cultivation and decrease pesticide applications. Here, the evidence actually is fairly unambiguous. BT cotton has dramatically increased seed costs. As I said, initially BT cotton cost at least 3 times more than ordinary cotton hybrids. And even after price caps by state and central governments, they cost more than ordinary cotton hybrids. And BT cotton has not reduced pesticide applications. A recent review by Keshav Kranti, the former director of the Central Institute of Cotton Research in Nagpur, and the anthropologist Glenn Stone this review suggests that benefits of BT cotton have been, quote, modest and ephemeral. Its lasting contribution, as per this review, has been increasing the capital intensivity of cotton farming in a country with a deep agrarian crisis. So all in all, BT cotton has been very beneficial to a section of seed companies and multinationals like Monsanto. And this actually takes me back to the role of the Department of Biotechnology with which I began my talk. Activists like Vandana Shiva often blame Monsanto for the distress of cotton farmers in India, but in a way that lets state institutions off the hook. On 2 separate occasions, 2 retired secretaries of the Department of Biotechnology told me that they considered BT cotton their greatest success. Which BT cotton? Not any public sector cotton, but Monsanto Maheko's BT cotton. This is only reflective of what I said earlier, that the way biotechnology was set up in the country, it reconfigured the priorities of public sector research in a way that marginalize the agriculture ministry. The DBT, if the DBT was so keen on promoting genetic transformation, it could have also worked with the public sector public sector agriculture, with agricultural research institutions to develop a public sector BT cotton variety, which it evidently did not. It has exclusively focused, as I said in the beginning, on promoting genetic transformation without paying attention to the upstream work of gene discovery or the downstream work of plant breeding. It could have also worked with the Agriculture Ministry to make sure that BT cotton is not circulated among resource poor farmers in dryland areas, but even that has not happened. In sum, I suggest that if there is a lesson to be drawn from BT cotton, it is that of a cascade of policy failures that have less to do with GM crops or Monsanto and more to do with the structure of biotechnology policy making in the country. What we really need is to revisit the relationship between plant biotechnology and agricultural sciences in terms of the needs of India's heterogeneous constituency of farmers and farm laborers. Or, as I said in the beginning, the real question that the DM debate in India poses is which science can best speak to the concerns and interests of Indian farmers, farm laborers, and consumers. Addressing the question is the real challenge before us, rather than declaring GM crops a success or failure by by one or more narrow yardsticks. Thank you very much. I'll stop here. I look forward to the questions.
Thank you, Aniket. That was fascinating talk, and I think the distinction of particularly this hybrid thing and how BT is specifically a trait that is introduced only in hybrid cotton is something which is not necessarily discussed so much in detail in other studies. So that was very informative for our work too. Yeah, now the floor is open. Like others, if you have questions, you can put it in the chat window, or you could raise your hands, and then I'll ask you to ask the question. Questions, comments? Yeah. Yeah, Binod. Yeah. Binod, you also introduce yourself a bit and then maybe ask the question. Huh?
Hello, sir. Thank you for nice presentation. I am Vinod Kumar Behra, doing PhD on agricultural influence and farmers' behavior and analysis from behavioral economics perspective under Tiago, Dr. Tiago Ranganathan and Hrusikesh Malik. And my question is, it is everybody known, it is well known that Indian agriculture have a risks like production risks, price risks. And if we see from this point of view, then this adoption of high variety seeds or adoption of new technology, it also leads to some type of risks in the agriculture, because there is no consensus whether adoption of particular variety of seeds reduce the cost of inputs like pesticides, insecticides, and fertilizers, so that it increases the input cost, or it is the cost of production, so that it also increase somehow risks for the farmers. Then how you see the, like if you see the Indian farmers, then how you see this adoption of high varieties of seed or new technology from the risk perspective, risk behaviors of the perspective of Indian farmers.
Right. So, thank you for that question. I'll answer that with 2 points. See, one is, if you're going to release a BT cotton, forget the GM debate for a moment. Forget the debate over ecological consequences and all. This is a product which, by the government's own scientists, its expression of BT protein is lowest in parts which are most susceptible to bollworm attacks. Now, we don't even need to, go into models of uncertainty to figure out that this is a risky product for farmers. I mean, what are they really purchasing? It's a poor quality product, you would say. So why was this allowed? Or why was this not addressed at the regulatory stage itself? So this is one angle. Second angle is that yes, every technology comes with risks. But my question would be my response would be what is the orientation for what is the direction in which your technology development is happening, right? See, whether it was the green revolution on today's, all the new ideas with gene editing or genetic modification, none of these address farmers' costs, which is the most direct way of improving profitability. If you look at GM crops, the promise always is that we will increase production either through saving of losses or saving of, or through, monoculture, herbicide tolerant crops. So there will be more production, but more production tends to depress prices. The relationship between production and profitability is indirect. More production translates to more profitability only if prices stay constant. So I would say that, from a risk perspective, the technology development that needs to be prioritized in a way, and that is what is happening with whatever else one may think about zero budget, natural farming, etc., etc. At least the focus is on costs rather than production. And that I think is a more sensible, risk mitigating strategy for agricultural development.
Aniket, there is a question in the chat window. Afas has written. Afas, can you state the question, or do I read it out? Okay, I think let me read it out. He's asking, how will genetically modified crops cater to the needs of the majority of the Indian agrarian workforce, small and marginal farmers, who lack access to technology like GM seeds and crops?
So, if you ask this question to the government, their response, rather specifically to the Department of Biotechnology or even now to the Indian Council of Agricultural Research, their answer is that, GM seeds are widely available in the market. And because they're widely available in the market, small and marginal farmers can also access them. And indeed, if you see the profile of cotton farming in areas like Vidarbha, in Andhra, in Telangana, in Gujarat, a large number of small and marginal farmers are accessing BT cotton seeds. But the question, as I've tried to raise today, is what are they accessing and what are they getting for this expensive product? So if I take the first part of your question, that how will it cater to the needs of the majority of Indian agrarian workforce, the answer there is that genetically modified crops, firstly, they, traits which cater to those needs. Firstly, you have to start with what are their needs. Then you have to say, can genetically modified cater to some of these needs? You have to start at that stage. I mean, you have to start with formulating the problem in exactly the terms that you've mentioned, Afaz. That what do small and marginal farmers need and what can GM crops do for them? Instead, what we have done is, for the last 2 or 3 decades now, is we have said there are these two traits, insect resistance, herbicide tolerance. And then, we have gone about and saying, okay, this can be useful here, this can be useful that. So in a way, instead of starting from the problem by formulating the problem, we have started with the solution. And GM crops are basically solutions looking for problems. So this whole orientation needs to be changed. In fact, there's a public interest litigation in the Indian Supreme Court filed by Dr. Suman Sahai since 2004, and its predominant thrust is that we have to, we have to do first. We have to frame policies for GM crops so that they cater to the needs of small and marginal farmers, rather than starting from the products and saying, will it be useful to the farmers and in what way they might be useful?
Yeah, Thank you, Aniket. There's another question. Govindapuram Suresh is asking, BT varieties are seen even in other crops, where n number of companies are coming to village and selling their seeds, which no one knows whether they are really good for production. I saw in my village, most of the farmers are going for cotton, but the outcomes are really bad. How can we control these issues? I mean, we call them regulations. Govindapura, can you also add which crops you are referring to other than cotton? That might be helpful. And Aniket, as he's saying BT brinjal. Okay. Yeah, Aniket.
Okay. Yeah, so it's a great question, and I would love to think with all of you. I mean, see, formally only BT cotton is approved. Informally, we know, or illegally, we know from field reports that BT brinjal is available, that herbicide tolerant cotton is also available. Now, I mean, how can we address these issues? I think that the only way that these issues can be addressed is to have, I mean, this might sound old-fashioned, but to have a robust public agricultural research and extension system, which is available for farmers for advice, which is available to do a bottom-up assessment of agricultural needs and feed it into the research system so that farmers have a pipeline of products. Because otherwise, see, even if you look at the latest pesticide management bill, I mean, or if you see Jaideep Hardikar's reports from Vidarbha, you have like one pesticide inspector for, huge territories. There's simply no way that that person is going to be able to regulate, such rapid changes, and also changes which are not visible to the naked eye, right? If you allege something is a GM seed, it needs some kind of testing before, you can conclude that it is indeed a GM seed. So I feel that, so of course, none of this is a coincidence. This is a political economy which suits companies. It is very easy to push a spurious or a fake product into the market at basically zero consequence to companies. Unless, there's such a huge outbreak. But even then, even when there have been mass agitations by farmers over failed seeds, nothing much has really happened. Some, paltry compensation has been given to farmers. So I feel there is no substitute for a robust public agricultural research and extension system.
Aniket, I had a question on this. As you were mentioning, the varieties adoption was higher and hybrid adoption was quite low before BT was there. Any particular reason why it was so? And also, how did it turn over? Like, was this not taken cognizance at all that now it's largely, I think it's about 96% in a period of 4 or 5 years that farmers moved to hybrid. So
that's right.
what is what happened during that period and what was happening before that is something, if you could elaborate. Yeah.
No, that's also a fascinating question, something which really needs much more research, So my sense is that because there were very good public sector cotton varieties in the North Zone. North Zone basically means cotton cultivating tracts of Western UP, Punjab, Haryana. Companies were finding it difficult to make an entry there with their cotton hybrids, because hybrids are always expensive, and hybrids put, basically, like I said, you have to purchase them season after season. So before BT cotton, only 4% of North Zone cotton acreage was under cotton hybrids. Rest of it was under varieties, some from the corporate sector, even corporate sector develops varieties, but predominantly from the public sector. Why BT cotton was able to, after BT cotton was allowed, I think, I think in 2005, from 4% within a few years, it went to 96%. So like the total switch from varieties to hybrids in the North Zone. Why that happened is not clear actually. That is what needs more research. Now, research from Andhra and Telangana suggests that aggressive marketing, what Glenstone calls, like the almost fad-like behavior through which cotton farmers were purchasing BT cotton seeds. Maybe that happened, but we don't actually know how it was marketed so successfully in the North Zone that there was, just a complete switch to hybrids.
Any other questions? I think, yeah, there is some comment, I think, from Govinda from Suresh. Here I want to add some more information that we have to buy the seeds from the guy and also all fertilizer, pesticide from the same shop. In the end, he will buy with a price mostly lower than MSP. I think he's probably referring to interlocking aspect.
Yes. Yes, yes, Mr. Suresh, I have seen that in the field. I've actually written a paper also on these retailers in Western Maharashtra. And this is why I suggest that because of such interlocking relationships, it is very hard to look at just sales statistics and declare that BT cotton is popular, BT cotton is a success. I mean, I would, and it's not about farmers' foolishness or intelligence as it's often made out to be. You go into a shop, you are offered a certain bouquet of products. If you choose to the best you can from among that. If non-BT products are simply not being offered to you, or if the shop itself is not stocking them, and the shop is not stocking them because the companies are not releasing them, then what happens? I mean, then you are effectively not making a choice. That is precisely the point. And I'll just add, another thing which has not been very well researched is why has there been so few varieties or, I mean, non-GM varieties or non-GM hybrids released by public cotton research stations in the past 2 decades? I mean, that pipeline has also dwindled, which really deserves to be scrutinized.
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, any questions, comments, clarifications,
Clarifications, yeah.
contrarian views, all
Yeah,
are welcome.
contrarian views also, yeah, very much. Right.
Professor, may I ask a question?
Certainly.
Yeah, Rohit.
Professor Aga, thank you very much for a very engaging presentation. I am a PhD student at Ashoka, so I will hopefully meet you soon, I guess. Very interesting work, but what I was curious is, from what I understand, there is information asymmetry at the core of this, and somehow the bureaucracy, government, because of the information asymmetry, they have been able to control or corner the narrative. Like they get to decide what the narrative on GMO is. So what's the way forward? How do we democratize, in terms of the access to the information? How do we, other than these localized protests by activists or public, especially when we are living in times where even in a parliament, discussions are very much stonewalled. Where do we go from here, especially when it comes to such game-changing technology, which could have very drastic effects and very long-lasting effects?
Yeah, it's a profound question, Rohit. And something which all of us can think about. I don't really pretend to have an answer to it. But with that said, I would still say that, see, policy, at least in theory, has to begin with the problem formulation stage. So we have to ask that if, instance, we are talking about farmers in Vidarbha, what we have to ask questions like, given that ecology, given the rainfall, what grows? What can grow there profitably? Instead of asking, is BT cotton a good crop for it? I hope that difference in emphasis is clear. Second is that for democratizing technology, you do need to have a robust knowledge system among farmers. That is, farmers cannot be taking their cues from retailers, or, I mean, it's all right to consult retailers, but cannot be exclusively dependent on external sources of information. So a living farm tradition where farmers are inventing, experimenting with different crop mixes, different cultivation routines and packages, cultivation package of practices has to be revived. And this is not, obviously, this is not a short-term fix. I mean, it's, um, to give you slightly long-term answer, I mean, just compare the kind of agriculture that Albert Howard is describing in the 1940s with the kind of agriculture that so many scholars and activists and researchers are describing today, right? There's been a total corrosion of agricultural knowledge systems, and I think A.R. Vasavi's work brings this out in, in very, very vividly. So that has to be reversed, and a knowledge tradition at the local agrarian level has to be rebuilt so that farmers are able to access, at least shape the direction of technology development, instead of merely receiving products from the outside.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you very much.
Uh, Thank you, everyone. Aniket, yeah, I hope we are letting you go on time for a meeting. Yeah, you wanted to say something? Or, yeah.
No, I think I just saw a hand from Vardha Ranjane.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Vardha.
hello.
Yeah, hey.
Yeah, hello. So I'm a policy student from IIT Bombay. I work with Professor Sarthak Gaurav. So I have this small question after what, it's a follow-up question from the previous question, that yes, that BT cotton does not reflect the farmers' preferences. And also the overemphasis on the supply side of policy is problematic, and that we are seeing in BT cotton, that we are seeing in soybean in Maharashtra, and like many of the crops. But if we want to address the demand side, and if you go to the farmers that what do you need, then you'll get a mixed responses. Okay, हमें नहीं पता या फिर माहित नहीं, maybe in
Correct.
Marathi, or maybe like हमें ऐसा कुछ चाहिए जो हमारा livelihood सुधार दे. मतलब this kinds of answer you'll get. So
Correct.
what could be the comprehensive solution? I am thinking it could be extension, like you also said that. But then how through extension we can address the demands? What could be the way that we can address these demands?
Okay. No, thank you. I think what you're saying is very true in the sense that it's not so straightforward as just going to the farmers and farmers will tell you we want A, B, C, D, E, right? But see, policy is never straightforward, right? You always have to discover interests. Interests are never self-evidently available in the field. So, Varada, is that your name? Am I pronouncing it right?
Yeah. It's Varada.
Varda. So Varda, let me give you an illustration from Maharashtra. So the area where I did field work is a grape tomato area. Okay. Now, if you ask farmers straight up, what do you want? They will give more or less the responses you said. If you spend more time with them, then you hear all kinds of concerns, right? You will hear concerns that, especially for both grapes and tomatoes, oh my, we are spraying so much fungicide. We don't know how it is impacting us, impacting our health, impacting our soil. So all these concerns are there, provided one spends a little more time and one knows how to read, the things that one is hearing. Or I mean, so why cannot that be through an extension system? See, extension system has usually been conceptualized as taking technology to the field. Why can't it also work in the reverse manner, taking problems back to the research system? So, for instance, a robust extension system will tell, whether they're the Grape Research Institute in Pune or whichever, that, okay, farmers are complaining about enormous fungicide fungus vulnerability in grapes. Can that problem be addressed at the level of plant breeding? Can it be addressed through recombinant DNA? I mean, then that becomes the conversation, right? And that guides your agricultural product pipeline, so to speak. So I
Yeah.
think that is what needs to happen. It's easier said than done, I admit.
Yeah. Thank you for your response. Yeah.
Thank you, Aniket. Also good to hear from you, Varada. I've heard a lot from Sarthak. And you as agricultural officer in Vidarbha, lot of things from the field you have told us. Aniket,
Yeah.
thank you.
I see.
Yeah.
Love to
I would
connect
love to
with
be in
you
touch with
also,
you, Varda.
Professor. Sure. I would like to be in touch with both of you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Aniket, for your time, and thank you for this talk and your responses. I think many people would be more interested to work in the questions that you are raising. And when probably next time we'll have it offline and hope to see you at CDS too.
I would love that. Thank you so much.
Yeah. To the participants, we'll have the next session at 3:30 p.m. Those in CDS can come to John Robinson Hall. It will be offline hybrid session, like offline online session. Huh? Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Aniket, and thank you all of
Thank you once again for having me and for the questions. Have a good day.